In this video, we'll take a look at listening part 3. We're going to give you some information, tips and strategies for this part of the exam, and also give you the chance to practice your listening in exam-style conditions. In particular, we're going to look at how to understand a speaker's opinion, so what they think about the topic they are discussing. Remember, it's a good idea to print out the PDF handout of this unit so you can easily make notes and underline key information during the listening tasks. Or if you don't have a printer, you can download it to a different device and use a highlighting tool for note-taking. In listening part 3, you hear an interview or a conversation between two or more speakers. It is another multiple choice activity like part 1, but this time there's only one recording and it's quite long. It can take up to 4 minutes. There are 6 questions, each with 4 options. You need to choose an answer, A, B, C, or D for each one. The questions follow the order of information in the recording. In other words, the first answer comes at the start of the recording and the last answer is at the end. As always, in the advanced exam, you hear the recording twice. This part of the exam tests how well you are able to identify the gist or the general meaning, the general idea of what each speaker is saying, as well as the speaker's attitudes and opinions on the topic being discussed. Let's take a look at some listening tips which can hopefully help you to do well in this part of the exam. Firstly, before you listen, read the questions and underline or highlight the main idea in each one. It's important for you to use the time provided to read the questions carefully and think about possible answers. Underline keywords in the 6 questions or statements so you know exactly what you need to listen for. Start by reading all the questions, and then if you have time, go back and start reading the options. Listen for the same ideas, not the same words. As I've mentioned in previous videos, Cambridge like to use red herrings or distractors, and in this section, it's no different. If you hear a word or a phrase that is exactly the same as what is written in the question or options, it could be a trick. For example, if option B uses the word privilege and one of the speakers uses the word privileged, then it's probably not the answer. So think again. Choose all the correct answers you can the first time you listen to the recording. Don't worry about missing a question. You can leave it and listen for the answer to the next question. Check your answers when you listen to the recording the second time. You can also then try to fill in any questions you have missed. It's a good idea as well to wait until the speaker has finished a particular turn before choosing an answer. The speaker may mention an important piece of information at the end of his turn, so don't hurry to choose an option. It's better to listen to everything they have to say in that particular answer before deciding on what the correct answer would be. And finally, eliminate answers that you know or can clearly tell are wrong. It's always a good idea to start off with crossing out the answers you know are not correct. You can often eliminate 1 or 2 of the 4 choices, so you have a better chance of getting the right answer, even if you don't know the meaning of a certain word. In the test, there will be words you don't know, and that's okay. It's important for you to develop the skill of deduction or guessing what words mean based upon the context. And this is something that we will keep practicing during the course. Let's do a practice task to develop some exam skills. So look at this question from a listening task. It's a radio interview with professional golfer Amy Hartman. Read the question and the options A to D and underline the keywords or phrases. Press pause and then press play when you're ready to check your highlighting. Take a moment to look at the suggested highlights in green. How do they compare to yours? Okay, so if you're ready, let's go on and do the listening. Let's see if you can find the correct answer.
We are here today with golfing phenomenon Amy Hartman. She won countless national and international tournaments. Now, Amy, I was glancing through your website profile and noticed that you were involved in a variety of sports throughout junior high and high school. What did golf have that these other sports were lacking that pushed you to keep playing?
I felt like I could become more successful with golf. I realise it more and more now that unlike track, volleyball and gymnastics, golf is a lot easier on my body as well. I will be able to play golf a lot longer than any other sport that I have ever participated in.
What was your answer? Did you put B? If so, you got the question right. Good job. Let's take a look at the audio script and see exactly what Amy says, and then try to analyze why B is the correct answer. So we can start by eliminating some answers. So it's definitely not C, because she says she was involved in track, volleyball, and gymnastics. So these are other sports. And we can cross out A and D because she doesn't say anything about her particular sporting talents or her favorite sports. However, she does clearly say that golf is a lot easier on her body, and so it will allow her to play for longer. So that's B, and that's one more point in the listening test. Now let's take a look at a slightly more difficult example. As before, read the question and options A to D and underline the keywords or phrases. Press pause and press play again when you're ready to go on. Take a moment to look at the suggested highlights in green. How do they compare to yours? Okay, so if you're ready, let's go on and do the listening. Let's see if you can find the correct answer.
This morning we have Samantha Prothero, Professor of Literature at the University of Bristol. Professor Prothero, there have been many novels written about life in the future. It has always been a subject that has intrigued writers. Why do you think that we have such fascination for a world that we will never live long enough to see?
It is part of human nature to strive to grow and develop intellectually, and so there is an innate interest in where our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren will end up. It's not so much a fear for their future or a desire to be there with them. It's more about the adventurer in us.
Can you give us some background on Huxley and his acclaimed novel Brave New World?
Aldous Huxley wrote Brave New World in 1932 while he was living in France and England. By this time, Huxley had already established himself as a writer and social satirist. He was a contributor to Vanity Fair and Vogue magazines, had published a collection of his poetry entitled The Burning Wheel in 1916, and published 4 successful satirical novels.
Did you also put B? Well, if so, well done. That again is the right answer. Let's now take a look at the audio script to see exactly why. Let's start by eliminating some answers. So it's definitely not A, because the professor clearly says that he had already established himself as a writer, so he wasn't trying to launch his career at this stage. And we can cross out C, because while it's known he was living in England and France, we have no information about if he was happy or not. So what about D? Well, it can't be that because he had published 4 successful novels. So even if you don't know what satirical means, it's clearly a style of writing that he preferred. So we can guess that he had decided what kind of writer he wanted to be. So by process of elimination, we can guess that the answer is B, and that's correct. So even if you don't know what a satirist is, you can still get to the right answer. And by the way, a satirist is a person who comments on problems in society and social behavior in a funny way. It's now time to do an exam task. Let's read the task instructions together. You will hear an interview with a man who enjoys ice skating in the Netherlands. For questions 15 to 20, choose the answer A, B, C, or D, which fits best according to what you hear.
When winter comes, get yourself to the Netherlands. Strap on some skates and swoop along the canals and frozen fields. For Conrad Wimmer, it's the only way to travel. Conrad, how did your passion for skating begin?
Well, my passion started 15 years ago when I was living in the canal-crossed city of Delft during a 10-day freeze. I'd already studied skating technique as demonstrated by the muffled-up skaters in the paintings of Averkamp and Bruegel. I joined friends to swoop and glide across the ice. Well, actually, it was more skids and tumbles, but with a bit of practice on the local duck pond, I mastered a rough approximation of the classic skate pose, hands clasped behind my back and legs lazily scissoring back and forth.
So, how can someone join in this wonderful ice frolicking?
There's the problem. Unlike mountains or oceans, which are always there to climb up or sail across, a good freeze only comes from a country in the climatic lottery. Thus the chance for the Dutch to be wild adventurers on their own land comes only every few years.
And then, I guess, a few keen skaters skid around on the ice for a day or two, right?
No, actually, pretty much the whole country closes down while everyone takes to the ice. Kids traditionally demand ice time, but then so do all the adults.
Still, surely you must need to be an obsessive skater to attempt the long tours.
Only if you want to skate the 200-kilometre cross-country race around the 11 cities course in less than 7 hours. Even then, 16,000 non-racing amateurs start before dawn to follow the same 200 kilometres, with most managing to cross the finish line before midnight. But racing aside, if you explore the frozen canals of the Netherlands, you'll enter the wonderful romantic world of the authentic traditional Netherlands, a country of hidden farmyards, lazy cattle, and interesting locals who look as though they are from another era. You'll glide across solidified frozen lakes with fish frozen into the ice. Occasionally signs will lean out of holes in the ice announcing dangerous ice as the surface cracks and groans with shifting temperatures. And you'll see lines of laughing skaters shooting past like colourful water snakes.
Finally, Conrad, do you have any tips for the novice skater?
Well, for a start, forget the hardcore all-in-one skates. Learn from the skaters on the old paintings who wore normal boots with blades attached to them. They're cheap to buy second-hand or new. Never skate alone or away from other skaters, and always stick to recognised routes where the ice has been checked for strength. Avoid ice under bridges, near to factory outflows, under trees or close to locks. Fields flooded to make outdoor rinks provide the safest place to learn on. Figuring out how to stop should be your first priority. And for goodness sake, keep warm. Speedy skaters, you never know, you might be a natural, tuck sheets of newspaper down the front of their trousers to avoid wind chill-assisted hypothermia.
When winter comes, get yourself to the Netherlands. Strap on some skates and swoop along the canals and frozen fields. For Conrad Wimmer, it's the only way to travel. Conrad, how did your passion for skating begin?
Well, my passion started 15 years ago when I was living in the canal-crossed city of Delft during a 10-day freeze. I'd already studied skating technique as demonstrated by the muffled-up skaters in the paintings of Averkamp and Bruegel. I joined friends to swoop and glide across the ice. Well, actually, it was more skids and tumbles, but with a bit of practice on the local duck pond, I mastered a rough approximation of the classic skate pose, hands clasped behind my back and legs lazily scissoring back and forth.
So how can someone join in this wonderful ice frolicking?
There's the problem. Unlike mountains or oceans, which are always there to climb up or sail across, a good freeze only comes from a country in the climatic lottery. Thus the chance for the Dutch to be wild adventurers on their own land comes only every few years.
And then, I guess, a few keen skaters skid around on the ice for a day or two, right?
No, actually, pretty much the whole country closes down while everyone takes to the ice. Kids traditionally demand ice time, but then so do all the adults.
Still, surely you must need to be an obsessive skater to attempt the long tours.
Only if you want to skate the 200-kilometre cross-country race around the 11 cities course in less than 7 hours. Even then, 16,000 non-racing amateurs start before dawn to follow the same 200 kilometres, with most managing to cross the finish line before midnight. But racing aside, if you explore the frozen canals of the Netherlands, you'll enter the wonderful romantic world of the authentic traditional Netherlands, a country of hidden farmyards, lazy cattle, and interesting locals who look as though they are from another era. You'll glide across solidified frozen lakes with fish frozen into the ice. Occasionally signs will lean out of holes in the ice announcing dangerous ice as the surface cracks and groans with shifting temperatures. And you'll see lines of laughing skaters shooting past like colourful water snakes.
Finally, Conrad, do you have any tips for the novice skater?
Well, for a start, forget the hardcore all-in-one skates. Learn from the skaters on the old paintings who wore normal boots with blades attached to them. They're cheap to buy second-hand or new. Never skate alone or away from other skaters, and always stick to recognised routes where the ice has been checked for strength. Avoid ice under bridges, near to factory outflows, under trees or close to locks. Fields flooded to make outdoor rinks provide the safest place to learn on. Figuring out how to stop should be your first priority. And for goodness sake, keep warm. Speedy skaters, you never know, you might be a natural, tuck sheets of newspaper down the front of their trousers to avoid wind chill-assisted hypothermia.
Take a moment to check your answers. In the exam, there will be words or phrases that you don't know, and that's okay. In that situation, you need to try and deduce the meaning from the context. So that means to guess or to figure out what something means, even though you're not sure. So let's work a bit on your deductive skills. Your task is to try and define or explain the words in blue in your own words. Use the context of the sentence and the listening task in general to help you. Now pause the video and press play when you're ready to review your answers. Let's take a look at the suggested definitions. So number 1, to strap on means to fasten something in position. In this example, the ice skates. Number 2, to swoop means to move very quickly and smoothly, like a bird, for example. Number 3, frolicking, as a gerund, is playing in a happy, energetic, carefree way. Number 4, novice describes a beginner or a person who isn't very experienced at doing something. And number 5, obsessive, describes thinking about someone or something too much. So how many of those definitions did you get? It's now time to do another exam task. Let's read the task instructions together. You will hear part of a radio interview with the comedian Lenny Henry. For questions 15 to 20, choose the answer A, B, C, or D, which fits best according to what you hear.
Lenny, you are currently studying English literature with the Open University. Why English literature? And why the Open University?
All of the people I admire in showbiz are very, very smart. Quite a lot of them have been to university and benefited from it. Doing my BA is really helping me to structure my thoughts. It's helped me to understand that good work is not an accident. You know, the best writers like Flaubert and George Eliot and people like that took a long time to plan their work. And the Open University has shown me that if you take the time to plan your work and structure it properly, you can do well. It's just helped me to organise my thoughts a bit better. And I think the challenge of producing an essay every month or so is good. It keeps me on my toes.
Why do you think comedy is such a powerful fundraising tool?
I think it's powerful because if I'm going to communicate with an audience, they remember something I said with a bit of a twinkle in the eye better than boring old facts. There is a lot of really heartbreaking and moving documentary stuff on the comic relief night, and if we can make people laugh in between, it softens the blow and cushions the effect of the harder stuff we show.
This year is the 10th anniversary of comic relief, but there's still a lot of poverty out there. Do you think it has made a real difference?
I think it's made an immense difference. It's empowered the public, given them the ideas and tools to raise money off their own back without anybody telling them what to do. I think it's fantastic when I come to Africa and I see the grain banks, the new wells that have been built, the children being inoculated, and terraced mountains that have been funded by comic relief. There are huge problems in Africa like HIV and AIDS, but a drip of water can erode a rock, and I think comic relief is becoming a strong and mighty drip. We've got to keep going until the rock dissolves, and it will dissolve, but it's going to take a long time, so people have to stay committed.
Work for comic relief has taken you to some pretty depressing places. How does seeing people coping with terrible poverty affect you personally?
I've been in Addis Ababa this time round. I went to a place called Debre Zeit, where I watched this wonderful care worker called Fanti visiting various people who were suffering from HIV. Even though these people were in immense pain, there was a lot of dignity involved. And what's wonderful is comic relief, by funding people like Fanti, are doing something to help.
You've received numerous accolades and awards during your career, and you're a husband and father and a mammoth fundraiser. Do you have any ambitions left?
I'd like to write something on my own that I feel was a good piece of work. And the only way I'm going to do that is if I have confidence and faith in my own ability. I've always worked with other writers. There's nothing wrong with collaborating, but I'd love to write something on my own and know it was good before I gave it to someone else to read. I think the Open University is helping me to judge my work in a way that writing something and giving it to someone to read for me simply doesn't.
Lenny, you are currently studying English literature with the Open University. Why English literature? And why the Open University?
All of the people I admire in showbiz are very, very smart. Quite a lot of them have been to university and benefited from it. Doing my BA is really helping me to structure my thoughts. It's helped me to understand that good work is not an accident. You know, the best writers like Flaubert and George Eliot and people like that took a long time to plan their work. And the Open University has shown me that if you take the time to plan your work and structure it properly, you can do well. It's just helped me to organise my thoughts a bit better. And I think the challenge of producing an essay every month or so is good. It keeps me on my toes.
Why do you think comedy is such a powerful fundraising tool?
I think it's powerful because if I'm going to communicate with an audience, they remember something I said with a bit of a twinkle in the eye better than boring old facts. There is a lot of really heartbreaking and moving documentary stuff on the comic relief night, and if we can make people laugh in between, it softens the blow and cushions the effect of the harder stuff we show.
This year is the 10th anniversary of comic relief, but there's still a lot of poverty out there. Do you think it has made a real difference?
I think it's made an immense difference. It's empowered the public, given them the ideas and tools to raise money off their own back without anybody telling them what to do. I think it's fantastic when I come to Africa and I see the grain banks, the new wells that have been built, the children being inoculated, and terraced mountains that have been funded by comic relief. There are huge problems in Africa like HIV and AIDS, but a drip of water can erode a rock, and I think comic relief is becoming a strong and mighty drip. We've got to keep going until the rock dissolves, and it will dissolve, but it's going to take a long time, so people have to stay committed.
Work for comic relief has taken you to some pretty depressing places. How does seeing people coping with terrible poverty affect you personally?
I've been in Addis Ababa this time round. I went to a place called Debrazite, where I watched this wonderful care worker called Fanti visiting various people who were suffering from HIV. Even though these people were in immense pain, there was a lot of dignity involved. And what's wonderful is comic relief, by funding people like Fanti, are doing something to help.
You've received numerous accolades and awards during your career, and you're a husband and father and a mammoth fundraiser. Do you have any ambitions left?
I'd like to write something on my own that I feel was a good piece of work. And the only way I'm going to do that is if I have confidence and faith in my own ability. I've always worked with other writers. There's nothing wrong with collaborating, but I'd love to write something on my own and know it was good before I gave it to someone else to read. I think the Open University is helping me to judge my work in a way that writing something and giving it to someone to read for me simply doesn't.
Take a moment to check your answers. Let's do a bit more practice with deduction. Your task is to try to think of a synonym for the words in blue. So that is a word with the same or nearly the same meaning. Again, use the context of the sentence and the listening task to help you. Once again, pause the video and press play when you're ready to review your answers. Let's take a look at the suggested answers. Number 1, to cushion, means to soften or reduce the effect of something. Number 2, inoculated is the same as vaccinated against a disease. Number 3, an accolade is an award. Number 4, mammoth means extremely big or huge. And number 5, dignity is similar to pride, self-respect, or grace. So how many of those synonyms did you get? That brings us to the end of listening part 3. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope it's been informative and that you've learned something. Before I leave you, I would just like to share one final thought and let you know or warn you about the fact that you have to be ready for the longest part of the test. As I said before, this can last up to 4 minutes, which is a really long time to be actively listening and paying attention. So to practice, make sure you listen to longer interviews and conversations on different kinds of media. Preparing for this part of the listening is kind of like preparing for a marathon. And like with running, practice makes perfect. You just have to train your ear. Okay, so don't forget to do the practice tasks that are connected to this module, and I will see you in video part 4.